Hey, NecroVMX here, and we're trying a new thing here. I'm going to be doing weekly comic book reviews, and we're going to be taking a look at the books came out in the week of August 6th, which is this week, and what I thought of them. I'll start off with Final Crisis number 3. This is a pretty big book, and a lot happens in it. Now, the thing about Final Crisis is I've been reading these kind of books for a long time. I'm a big fan of Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis and Zero Hour and Identity Crisis and all that stuff. I'm still not sure what to think of Final Crisis, and we're in the third issue. I don't know if it's really a good sign. It seems that Grant Morrison writes two kinds of comics, good ones and really confusing ones. And it seems that Final Crisis falls into the confusing category. I don't know what the hell is going on. The story is basically continuing the fact that Darkseid is slowly taking over the world, and it looks like Libra is working for him, which is kind of a disappointment. I knew that Libra was working for somebody bigger, but I'm kind of disappointed that it was Darkseid. I kind of knew that it would be, but I was hoping that they would go in a different direction. I'm so sick of all this, new gods, fourth world crap. When I heard of Death of the New Gods, I was pretty excited, but not because I wanted to read it, but because I thought, hey, maybe this will be the end of all that Jack Kirby's Fourth World bullshit. I hate that crap. Darkseid, man. If I have to take one good thing out of reading the entirety of Countdown to Final Crisis, it's the fact that Darkseid got killed in it, and a couple of other new gods. Well, it looks like all they did was come back in human bodies, and it looks like now Wonder Woman has found that out. Speaking of Wonder Woman, she's really the only major hitter in the Trinity that's left. Superman, he's not active right now. He's sitting there as Clark Kent next to Lois Lane. I don't know if Lois is going to die, and probably not, but she's pretty damn well injured. And it seems that Superman sitting there with his heat vision is the only thing keeping her alive, so he really can't leave her side. Batman was captured in issue 2, and he's not even seen in this issue. And as for the Flash, well, we saw at the end of the last issue that Barry's back, that him and Wally and Jay were running from that Death Race guy. Well, it looks like they got away from him. It's something as a known fact that the Death Race guy can't run at more than the speed of light, which is, I guess, a good thing for the Flashes, because most of them can. This is all explained by Jay Garrick as an afterthought. It really doesn't pick up where the last one left off. Also, Libra kind of shows his true colors when he turns on the human flame and jams a helmet on his head that feeds him the anti-life equation. It looks like they're trying to do the anti-life equation worldwide. I don't know why they're trying to do this. Now, the degenerates of Apocalypse are not the only ones that have come back. It looks like the people from New Genesis have come back also, although they're kind of running into some problems. Also, Hal Jordan is still arrested by the Alpha Lanterns, although we know that at least one of them is really have been taken over by one of the evil new gods. Speaking of which, I think the most evil of the new gods would have to be the one that designed Mary Marvel's new costume. Ugh. I don't understand the progression of this character. She was always this, sweet, innocent, girl, and then Paul Dini in Countdown decided to make her bad, and then he did this whole redemptive cycle where she found redemption and became good again. And then she just became evil again just for the hell of it, just because Darkseid showed up at her apartment and was like, hey, you want to be evil? And now this new costume, man, I don't know what the hell her problem is, and that hair. Overall, I'd say I liked Final Crisis number 3, and I think it'll probably make more sense in the grand scope of things, but right now I'm just kind of confused by the whole thing. Next up, we got Detective Comics number 847. Now this is a whole nother sack of worms here. This is the second part of the Heart of Hush. Now Hush is not exactly a great villain. He has potential to be one, but he's never really been handled really well. Batman's barely in this. It mostly focuses on Hush, Zatanna, Catwoman, Nightwing, and Robin. And we know if you read Batman why he's not really been around so much. There's also it goes more into Hush's origin and his connection with the Scarecrow, which I think makes him a little more interesting than he was. Overall, if you're into the story, you'd want to pick this issue up, but overall, it's really not that good. I found the art style of it to be rather sloppy, and the writing to just be rather loose. I don't really get where they're going with this, or what it has to do with Batman R.I.P. So, for the most part, I just feel that it was pretty average. Speaking of which, next up we have Trinity number 10. I can't stand this series. I loved 52 and I tolerated Countdown, but Trinity, I just can't stand this series. I mean, the whole thing is just so boring. I mean, it has to do with the crime syndicate and Superman's kind of losing his marbles. And I just skimmed through most of it because it's so dreadfully boring. Like last issue, the backup feature is more interesting, probably because it features Robin and Nightwing. Now, the whole story is about, this group of supervillains that's stealing objects that mean a lot to the Trinity, and Batman and Nightwing are working on the fact that this, big, giant, sassy ape is stealing a piece of Crime Alley. They've already stolen other things that have to do with Batman, as well as Superman and Wonder Woman. The story itself is not that interesting, but I like kind of the brotherly bickering between Tim and Dick. That's the only thing that makes it worth a glance. Other than that, bad issue. Okay, moving on to Supergirl number 32. Now, this series has seen a lot of ups and downs, and I don't know exactly if they're ever going to pick a direction. This wraps up the whole thing with the little boy who had cancer and died, and Supergirl goes through some pretty astounding lengths to try and save him, or rather to try and have his parents be able to go back in time and relive their lives with him, although I think that would be really more painful than it's worth. In the process, she does get a new costume, which I like better than the costume she had. I mean, that belly shirt was just ridiculous, and this looks more like a Supergirl costume that you would actually want to see. But overall, I mean, it was a pretty good issue, and I'm glad this story is over with. We'll see what happens afterwards, though. I'm going to say it was an above-average issue. Moving over to Marvel Comics for a bit. Well, just for one issue, because I didn't get the other two issues that I wanted to read. And speaking of which, if I don't get to read and review something by Thursday, I'll just push it to next week. Venom Dark Origin number 1. Now, I was always a fan of Venom. I always bought all the Venom comics, and I even bought the Spider-Man comics that he was in. It looks like they're retelling his origin, and I can't say I like the direction they're going with it. It seems to be that they're making out that he was always a little sociopathic maniac, a habitual liar who seems to have a built-in lie detector. His father's has also changed. Instead of being this kind of, asshole, he actually comes off as somebody who kind of blames his son for his mother's death, but still tries to do the right thing and still tries to be a good father, even though he's not very good at it. They get into his sister a little bit. I don't know what the deal with that is. I didn't really like the art style. It kind of reminded me of a bad impression of Sam Keith on the Max. So, I'm just not thrilled with this. I'm going to give it a fair shake, of course, and I'll read the rest of the series. But as far as I'm concerned, Venom Dark Origin number 1 is pretty much a flop. Moving on to Nightwing number 147. Now, this was an interesting book because it has Two-Face in it, and anything with Dick Grayson or Robin and Two-Face is always interesting to me. It seems that Two-Face has shown up in New York City asking Nightwing for help. He'd normally go to Batman, but Batman's kind of, insane in the membrane right now. So, well, the thing always seems to be about saving this district attorney that Harvey Dent was in love with back in the day, although he never did anything with her because, he had a wife and he never broke a vow in his life. So anyway, Nightwing gets this girl out of hot water because she's supposed to be testifying for some big bad people, but all of a sudden they're attacked by a mysterious sniper. Now, I personally think it's probably Two-Face, but we'll see in next issue. I like the cover, by the way, the whole thing with Nightwing as Two-Face. That was pretty cool. I would say this is another above-average issue. And lastly, we go to Robin number 176. This is an interesting issue. It's another Batman R.I.P. tie-in, and unlike the ones in Detective Comics, this actually seems to tie in to Batman R.I.P., and it's actually a pretty good story. Robin and the Spoiler are going around trying to find cell phone pictures of Batman, and they're working with the Penguin, which is interesting. The cover shows that the Spoiler has a secret, and you see that she starts deleting the cell phone pictures as soon as they find them, and Robin gets kind of, frustrated with this. It turns out that, the secret is nothing big. It's just something Batman asked her to do because he feels that, this is the end of him, and that he felt it coming and wanted Robin to move on without him. It ends with a very iconic line that even if Batman is gone, Gotham City will always have Robin, which is pretty cool because I think he's almost a more interesting character at this point than Batman, although Grant Morrison is trying his best to make Batman as interesting as possible. I hope that they don't drag out too long this whole resentment that Tim has for Spoiler, and I hope they make up and perhaps even get back together sometime in the future. And, because she could be his partner in a world without a Batman, or, in a world with a different Batman that Robin may not see eye to eye with. Although I see that as kind of being a retread of the whole Nightfall arc. Anyway, I would definitely say that Robin 176 is probably the best comic that I read this week, which doesn't really say much. It was a pretty weak week. But hey, there you go. I didn't get to review Punisher War Journal or a couple of other books, but we'll just save them for next week. See you next week.